Hello everybody, my name is Pravus, and welcome to a new Democracy 3 series for this channel, backed by popular demand. And of course I did promise that I would be releasing one around this time of the year, so here we are, and I hope you guys are as excited as I am. Now before we go too far, I just kind of want to lay down some groundwork and what to expect, because I do know that my channel has grown substantially in the last month, about tripled in size, and there are probably going to be a few people who are not familiar with this game and how I approach it, so let me tell you, Democracy 3 is a political simulator, and I am a fairly political person myself, so it is inevitable at some point I probably will be talking about politics, and kind of talking about my perspective, what I think works and what I think does not. Sometimes that can last only a few seconds, sometimes it can take several minutes. Now, if that's not something you're interested in, don't worry. I try not to be too overbearing with my opinions, but also, if I do go on a long tangent, which some people really enjoy, I will always include a skip option for those who want to go straight to the gameplay, so just be aware, that's going to be there. And of course I have my own personal biases and perspectives of the world. I've tried to be very informed and educational about how I've reached those opinions, but some of you guys are going to agree with me and many of you will not, and I've had plenty of disagreements with people in my comment section. But as long as we all approach it respectfully and understand that we all really want the same things, we want freedom and prosperity, it's just a question of certain worldviews and political philosophy and what the pragmatism and what you think is going to work, well then I think we can have an honest discussion as long as it is respectful. So just keep that all in mind as you go forward. It's probably going to happen at some point. I never script it, it just sort of happens. And some people have really come to enjoy those, but some not so much. So again, I'll leave a skip option for you. Let's move on with the game. Now, as far as Democracy 3, what we'll be playing with, we will include the social engineering, extremism, clones and drones, and electioneering expansion packs. No other mods will be included at this time, though. And as far as what nation we are going to be playing, there is only one left on this list that we have not played, and that is going to be Australia. The world's 6th largest country by total area, and the world's 12th largest economy, at least at the time that this game was made. I don't know if that's changed. I haven't really been paying attention. But anyway, yeah, so we're going to be playing as Australia today, and that should be pretty fun, but I want to make this kind of challenging, you know? At this point, we've already done 5 series. What we've typically done is we pick a particular goal, like liberal capitalist or conservative socialist or something along those lines, and we build our country based on a certain ideology. And that's gone extremely well for us, and it's been very challenging, and it's been very fun. This time, though, I really want to crank things up, namely by changing the difficulty of the game to maximum, 200%. That's what we're going to be going for, and I'm going to show you guys how you can still beat this, what kind of things you need to prioritize, and as long as we can survive the first election, I think we're going to be okay, but we will see. I'm not going to touch the political apathy, which just kind of registers how likely people are to get out there and vote and such. I'm not going to touch the liberalism and the socialism. Whatever is default for Australia itself is going to be fine for me. Compulsory voting is a thing in Australia, which is interesting. I don't think we've had that in most of our other campaigns, but in Australia, every single voting citizen must vote. That is a requirement. So, okay. Now, as far as naming the parties, I think today we're going to go for the Popular Nationalists, simply because I think that nationalism seems to be, or at least populism, seems to be growing a little bit, seems relevant. But in order to have a proper, I don't know, opponent to the Popular Nationalists, at least as relevant to the latest elections in the United States, I'm going to be calling my opponents the literal, Shakers. Yeah, the Popular Nationalists versus the literal Shakers. That's how we're going to be playing this. Yep, you already know how this series is going to go. There is no limit to terms. We could technically keep going forever as long as we can get reelected, but I typically end my series after 2 terms. Term length by default is 5 years in Australia. Let's go ahead and play the game. Of course, because I'm playing on a new computer, it wants to show me tutorials, which I obviously do not need. I am more or less an expert at this game. Well, more or less. I mean, there are some things I can always stand to learn. Welcome to your new job as Prime Minister. The lives of all 22 million citizens are now in your hands. Lots of things to worry about. So, in Australia, one thing that is interesting is we actually have pretty solid education right off the bat, and our health isn't terrible either. We do have a lot of struggles in our GDP, unemployment, and crime, and poverty is a bit higher than I would be comfortable with. And actually, by comfortable with, I would rather it be at 0, but, you know, this isn't in the red at least. It's not quite like playing a series of Democracy 3 Africa where everything is just down in the crapper. I mean, Australia's doing okay right now, but not great. There's a lot of room for improvement, so let's begin our first term. Welcome to the game, guys, especially for those of you guys who are not very familiar with this. These represent the different policies in the game, and you can kind of see how they all affect different metrics in your nation, including some crises events. Let's go over those now. In Australia, we have a homelessness epidemic. We are an uncompetitive economy. We have pollution problems, asthma epidemic, vigilante mobs, ghettos, this is street gangs, organized crime, alcohol abuse, and antisocial behavior. I've never understood exactly what this symbol is supposed to represent. Does anyone know? Is he leaning over and coughing? Is he screaming at the ground? Is he trying to show you his buttocks and fart in your face? I don't know. Either way, not good stuff. Lots of law and order problems that we're going to have to solve pretty early on in the game. We also are rocking a $75 billion deficit. I actually don't know what the currency is in Australia. They don't use pounds, do they? I actually don't know. Someone will undoubtedly tell me in the comment section, but I promise I will look it up after I finish recording this video. Either way, whatever the currency dollar, it says dollars, so maybe it's just Australian dollars. 75 billion deficit, which is pretty substantial actually, and it is contributing to the existing national debt of $342.78 billion. We have 25 political capital to begin with. Of course, this is generated... Get out of here, tutorial. Of course, this is generated by my council and their effectiveness and their loyalty to me. So, yeah, we'll have to keep track of that and obviously maximize it as best as we can. But for now, let's start with some of the basics. We know that we need to improve our crime situation, yes? And this is arguably, I would say, one of the most important things you can do in any Democracy 3 series right off the bat is try to tackle crime. Why? Because crime will contribute to weakening... Well, actually, we can just find the metrics. Hang on, where's crime going to be? There it is, crime. So in this game, first off, it increases the prison cost by a lot because we're imprisoning a lot of people. It makes everyone unhappy, but it also greatly reduces the GDP. There are many ways to affect crime. You can try to increase education so people are more educated and have better opportunity in life and don't feel the need to go to crime. You can have better police force to enforce it. You can reduce poverty so people aren't desperate. Lots of different things that we can do. But the problem right now is that crime in Australia is being driven by several of these negative events that are happening right now, street gangs, antisocial behavior, and so on. The irony being that these are also being affected by the incredibly low crime rate, at least some of them are. So it's kind of a positive feedback loop, and we're going to have to make something break at some point. And I think one of the best ways we can do that, at least in the very early game, is increase the police force to maximum. This is usually a fairly popular thing to do, certainly with conservatives and state employees because we're hiring a lot of people. But crime and violent crime goes down quite a bit. Unemployment goes down because we're hiring more people, and this will directly attack several of these events: street gangs, antisocial behavior, alcohol abuse, and vigilante mobs. So all of these negative events will start going down, and all of these are leeches on our health and GDP and education in some various different ways. So I think that's a very good start. Now, of course, we're going from $4 billion up to 8.3. So we're spending a bit of money, and we're probably going to want to address that pretty soon. But you can't have a good, strong economy without the rule of law. That is an absolute necessity. And it actually is very interesting, I think, because you can contrast this pretty easily to different class neighborhoods, I guess you could say, especially in, say, the United States, where in the middle class areas, for example, you have a particular cost of living, and you would expect in the lower class areas that goods are cheaper, lower quality, kind of goods in order to attract that market. But sometimes the price of those items is actually higher in the low cost areas than they are in the middle class areas. And that seems very counterintuitive, but a big part of that is because of crime. Crime increases the cost of operating a business. It increases the risk. You need to have various different insurance and so on. So that's one of the big reasons that I think that low-income neighborhoods often find themselves in kind of a sticky situation where the price of their living is going up, and they're in the least available position to fix that. And that's a big part of that. It comes down to crime. So having better police force is going to be good for us. That's good in the real world. It's good in this game, certainly. And this is one of the least controversial ways to try and tackle crime. Now, by the way, I actually forgot to talk a little bit about the voter demographics. This is going to be very important to us because since we are playing at the maximum difficulty, it is not really advisable to try to switch up the voter demographics too much. Right now we are mostly socialistic, and it probably would get me killed, literally assassinated, if I try to switch everything to capitalist. So we're really going to be playing to the existing voter strengths and not switch things up too much. Right now I am seeing that socialist and conservative are the most popular, which actually fits very well with the nationalist theme that we're looking at. So I'm probably going to go for those, Religious, surprisingly, is extremely low. But they are a natural ally to the conservatives. Whatever makes conservatives happy sometimes, oftentimes, will make religious happy as well. So increasing their membership can work out pretty well for us. Patriots will be pretty good for us. Trade unionists probably will be good as well because of socialism. We're probably not going to be very popular with ethnic minorities, though. So that's a bit of a problem. Environmentalists, I think, will be okay. So self-employed, capitalists, ethnic minorities, and liberals are probably going to be our enemies in this particular game. So we're going to focus mostly on making the socialists, patriots, religious, conservatives happy. That's probably our best course of action to win the game and not get horribly, horribly murdered. All right, so now that we've established that, let's go back to the game. We do want to, well, we do need to tackle poverty as soon as we can as well. So I've done what I can as far as some crime, at least for now. Let's see how much effect the police force will have. But if we look at some of this, poverty and unemployment are huge contributors to the street gangs. And the street gangs actually are driving down tourism, increasing crime, making a lot of people unhappy. And also, they are contributing to ghettos. So if we are able to help tackle poverty and unemployment pretty early on, street gangs going away will also help get rid of ghettos, killing two birds with one stone. We also need to get rid of the vigilante mobs, which is being driven by crime, just straight up. Tons and tons of crime leads to tons and tons of vigilante mobs, because they have no faith in the police. So by funding the police better, this should go a long way to try and tackle crime and make sure they understand the rule of law is back in charge. Let's see. Organized crime could be a bit of a problem. Gambling is actually contributing. Do we have legalized gambling? Oh, we do. There are no restrictions on gambling in Australia. Well, that could be a bit of a problem. We may end up wanting to eliminate this entirely, which will make the religious happier. It'll upset the liberals and hurt the GDP a little bit, but that might be good for us. Antisocial behavior, just increasing the police force alone is probably going to go a long way to getting rid of this, so I'm actually not too worried about antisocial behavior. And once that's gone, we'll be in a better spot. So let's try to tackle poverty with some of the most popular populist options. And those are basically food stamps. Food stamps is not ridiculously expensive for what you get in this game. Health will go up, the poor will be happy, poverty goes down, socialists love it, farmers like it, and equality overall, like income equality, goes up. And our voters, maybe my viewers as well, I don't know, but, oh, would you look at that? That is the name of... Okay, that's not someone I know. Never mind. Anyway, compassion goes up. Our voters will consider us to be more compassionate people, which is pretty awesome. So we're going to go ahead and pass the food stamps. I know we're kind of increasing our deficit, but right now we're going to need to spend a little bit of money to stabilize things. Then we can worry about raising taxes and cutting certain services that are not very beneficial. And along the same lines, with food stamps, we can pass... it's probably under public services. Yeah. Free school meals for children in schools. This is even cheaper, $1.19 billion, but it also reduces poverty by a whopping 14%, and also increases our health. Now, this is really significant because I suspect that Australia has really good socialized healthcare, yes? Pretty decent, it's pretty high up there. So increasing the health of all of our citizens, or at least most of them, will probably help reduce the cost of the state healthcare service itself. So that's a worthwhile investment for me, certainly, to try and get those school meals and those food stamps working together to improve our country's health and eradicate poverty at the same time, and increase equality, which is usually just going to make everyone happy. So that's pretty good. Now, one thing I love to reduce, as far as tackling this deficit, because now we're spending money, is state pensions. State pensions are very expensive just to make retired happy. I know that it does reduce poverty, but look how much this costs. $33 billion per quarter. That's way too much. Honestly, I would love nothing better than to reduce this all the way down to zero, which still costs me $8 billion, but it costs way more political capital to cancel it than to lower it. And even at zero, the retired will still like me a fair bit. I mean, sure, it won't do anything as far as poverty and stuff, but this is going to save us a ton of money that we can spend on other more effective policies without upsetting people too much. Now, that said, I don't have enough political capital, so let's move on to the next turn. Get out of here, tutorial. Credit rating downgraded. That is to be expected. Our deficit is increasing and our debt is going up as well. So, yeah, this upsets the capitalists and hurts the GDP. It also increases our expenditure on debt interest every quarter. So, credit rating downgrades really suck, but until I can stabilize, this is probably going to happen one or two more times. We also have a major donor abandoning the party. Now, this is something new that happened in the electioneering expansion, where we actually have donors that will contribute toward your campaign to try and get you reelected. Well, somebody has left because they don't like me, so ouch, but not much I can do about it right now. Global economy is in a recession. Our budget deficit has increased up to $80 billion per quarter. That was to be expected. Why don't we go ahead and reduce those pensions now? It's going to cost me 26 political capital to do this. Basically, we're just gutting Social Security entirely. But that doesn't mean that people aren't going to have any retirement. You'll see down here that by reducing this, actually the private pensions will start to reassert themselves in the market. Because there's no public option, the free market will then, come up with some solutions. So people will have to go to 401ks and other employer-driven retirement accounts instead of Social Security. So we're going to save ourselves, what was it? About $25 billion per quarter. That's really, really good. So I almost never use state pensions. I don't find them to be worth the money. There are so many other ways to reduce poverty and make people happy. It is a really good way of making the retired like you. But come on, that's not worth the price. That's just too freaking much. All right, let's take a look at the GDP itself and see what's really impacting us right now. We actually have a carbon tax. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. Australia has a carbon tax. They may be one of the only nations in the base game that actually does start with this, but that's interesting. Legalized prostitution? Oh. That's another thing we're going to have to get rid of. We have foreign investor tax breaks and stem cell research. Quite a few things you don't normally see for a starting country. Crime is obviously a problem. Uncompetitive economy is a real problem. Traffic congestion, 7.34%. That's really substantial. Wow, our roads must be terrible. Car usage is really high, and we don't have enough roads in order to meet that demand. We need to try and reduce that in order to improve our... Wasn't this 7 just a minute ago? Maybe that was the last turn. Nah, never mind. We need to try and reduce the number of cars on the road. Now, I could do that by just, banning certain cars and stuff like that, but let's do a telecommuting initiative. This is actually pretty easy. It does cost a little bit of money, but in the early game, it's not so bad. What we're going to do is we're going to make commuters happy, but there are going to be less of them. Commuter membership will go down. Car usage goes down. Parents and trade unionists both like it. It's okay. It'll help in the long run reduce the GDP stuff a little bit, and it doesn't cost a lot of political capital. But we don't want to do too many small policies up front. We really want to go in with a big honkin' hatchet and start cutting up the budget. Forget the whole scalpel thing that Obama was talking about. No, we're using a hatchet. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Let's move on into the next turn. Another major donor abandons the party. Oh, crud. And poverty is going up. But crime is going down, which is what we really, really wanted to see. And the deficit has been reduced back down to $65.86 billion per quarter. Now, GM food proposal, a number of large agricultural companies are interested in growing genetically modified food on our soil, like Monsanto. Some food can be genetically manipulated to allow for longer shelf life and both disease and herbicide resistance. Opponents are concerned about the potential risks associated with altering the food chain. So, do we allow for genetically modified crops or not? Now, personally, I'm not opposed to genetically modified food. I know that there have been a lot of concerns that genetically modified food might lead to cancer. I haven't seen any conclusive evidence on this. And in the meantime, I know that there's a lot of benefit to having food that isn't... I think people think that genetically modifying food is, something as crazy as getting in there with some high-tech gadget and actually manipulating the DNA of a plant. It usually comes down to kind of breeding. Almost like you would breed horses and stuff and try to breed in good genetic strains and, don't let them breed with genetically inferior horses. Kind of the same kind of concept. What we're doing is we're trying to crossbreed and make stronger certain plants. And that can lead to higher food yields, which is really good for driving down the cost of food and making it more affordable to the poor, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of good stuff that can come from genetically modified crops, but the exact health implications aren't always known. That said, in the game, I think that capitalists will probably end up liking this a bit. If we reduce this, environmentalists, I would imagine, are happy with me, and it would not surprise me if health goes slightly up. So we're going to ban the sale of GM food. This may make the poor unhappy, and it may upset the capitalists, but I think that's going to be the best solution for us overall. Now we have 28 political capital to work with. We need to be investing in a few more things, so let me think for a second. We need to increase the GDP, yes. Uncompetitive economy is driven by bad productivity. Our workers are just not producing much. They may be working their 40 hours a week or whatever it is in Australia, but they just can't produce as much as, say, a really, really cheap worker in China, and that's why we're becoming uncompetitive in the global economy. So increasing productivity is going to be really good. Actually, our health being kind of low is one of the main drivers of that. So tackling our health could be good. Our high education is a good thing. That's been helping us quite a bit. Too much alcohol is being consumed, the asthma epidemic, industrial automation, wages. So a few things we probably could do. Health is something we could probably address fairly cheaply in the early game. But we really need some big GDP boosters is what we need. You know, we need something like small business grants or the enterprise investment scheme or, whoops, something like that. This is my expenditure, by the way, if you don't know. Let's take a look at the economy tab and see if there are any new policies we could pass that would be good. Rural development grants are certainly really strong, but what about... Now here's the thing about the enterprise investment scheme. It's pretty expensive and it will be increasing capitalist membership, which means we'll get a reduction in socialist membership, which you might think is really bad for us. But it is also incredibly effective at growing the economy. We're going to pass it. I don't think I'm going to get rid of it. I don't think I'm going to get 100% socialism in this game. I just need enough to win elections. That's all that matters. So we're going to pass this, and yes, it's going to reduce socialism membership by 8.58%. Ouch, that's going to hurt. The self-employed will love me, the GDP will go up by a whopping 5% though, and the wealthy will become wealthier. Okay, but more people are going to be starting their own businesses because of this, and the GDP growing by 5% is going to be pretty good. As the GDP grows, we'll be able to tax more. That's going to be good for helping us tackle the deficit. You know, we're spending money with the hope that eventually it's going to pay for itself and then some in the future. At least that is the idea. The alternative is just to raise taxes, which is a big drag on the GDP, and can reduce your overall taxes as well. So it's a bit of a trade-off. You know, kind of hard to tell exactly what's going to happen there. You know, one thing I do need to do, though, I actually could raise a tax, and that's the petrol tax. We need 36 points. Okay, hang on. So the petrol tax basically is just applying a tax to the gasoline or the petrol that you use for your car. Most countries have at least some sort of a petrol tax. It can be worth a lot of money to us. Right now, we are making $5 billion per quarter. And ultimately, I find that this does not do a lot to hurt the GDP until you reach... you know, the high percentages. 75% obviously is a big problem. No one drives cars because it's too expensive, right? The environment improves, but that's about it. I find that at about 42% is the sweet spot where you can get a good amount of money, reducing car usage, which by the way increases the GDP for us because we have traffic congestion, but it doesn't have much effect on the GDP, if any. So this would give us an extra $17 billion per quarter, which is huge. But it costs too many political points right now. So we can't do this. We want to save some points for next time. And right now we are generating 24 per turn. So I think it can afford to do at least a little bit of something. Maybe something to improve health. We did talk about that. What's a good option for that then? Could do, you know, one of the things we could do that's really cheap is something simple like the healthy eating campaign. This only costs a few $100 million and only 2 political capital, but it can actually do a lot to improve your health. Yeah, okay, this is actually remarkably cost-effective. So $300 million in order to increase our health by 4.47%. That's really, really solid. In contrast, and I'm not going to do all the math for you, but if we go to the state healthcare services, we're spending $34 billion in order to increase our health by about 19%. I'm pretty sure if you break it down by how much money is spent per percentage point of health, you're going to find that this is nowhere near as cost-effective as something as simple as a healthy eating campaign, getting people to engage in a wellness program that improves their health so that they don't need our health care. Now, we're going to save the rest of our points, though, and we're going to move on into the petrol tax. There goes the credit rating again, down to an A. I kind of knew that was going to happen. It's unfortunate. And we still have a budget deficit of $65 billion. We did, however, get a celebrity endorsement, which is weird. Who's a good Australian celebrity? I'm gonna say that Hugh Jackman just endorsed me. Yeah, that makes me feel really good about myself. I don't know if he'll agree with my politics. I actually don't know his political stance, but we're just gonna say that Hugh Jackman, the Wolverine, loves me. Now I feel pretty good about myself. Everyone likes me a little bit better, and the kids in particular are very happy. I mean, this looks nothing like Hugh Jackman. Pay no attention to the picture. I have no idea who that's supposed to be, but all right. Anyways, all right, 42 points. So let's increase that petrol tax, like I said I was going to about 42%. We're going to have pretty high taxes in this. If we're going for a socialist playthrough, I think that's more or less inevitable. There are really 2 ways of approaching the economy in this game. One is kind of, well, honestly, it really comes down to capitalist versus socialist. Either the socialist kind of high regulation, high tax and spend economy, or we can go more the capitalistic laissez-faire approach, which can have its benefits. it can be really, really effective for pretty low cost, but of course it means you don't have as much control in the market as you would like when it comes to things like pollution and stuff like that. So we're going to probably be going for a very high tax and spend economy. I think that's just inevitable, but we'll try to take advantage of some of the capitalistic approaches wherever we can. Now, we only have 6 political capital left before I will end this video, so let's try a couple simple, cheap little things that will help. Like, for example, what if we did, well, what if we go to health food subsidies? This also costs less than $300 million per quarter, but it also increases our health by another 7.81%. That's even better value than the healthy eating campaign we did before. So this is going to go a long way. Forget our state healthcare. Those 2 policies alone will go a very long way to increasing our health, which will be very good for our productivity, which will be very good for the GDP and getting rid of the uncompetitive economy. I may have no choice but to pass some sort of tariffs in order to get this the rest of the way, but we'll talk about that later as we come to it. I got 3 points left. What can I spend it on? Let's just say carpooling. I'm going to try to reduce our traffic congestion even further. Just spend a couple $100 million in order to reduce our car usage by another 3.4%. Can we find traffic congestion anywhere? Car usage leading to... There's traffic congestion. Okay, it's starting to dip down a little bit. We want to get it a lot lower if we can. That might mean some really expensive investments into mass transit, but at least for now, I'm just going to take some simple and cheap steps to try and reduce it so that it doesn't drain our GDP as much as it has been, because that's been pretty bad. Nothing we can do about the global economy, of course. That's just how it is, but we'll see. All right, I'm going to have to end this video here. If you guys are not familiar with this series already, then what I typically do is I break every video up by 1 year of in-game time. That is 4 turns. Sometimes that video is only like 10 minutes long. Sometimes it's 20 minutes long. Depends a lot on what we're trying to accomplish, and it depends on if I go on a so-called rant, as some of my viewers have very affectionately begun to call it. And that can happen. I personally, I don't think they're much of a rant. I mean, I talk a lot. I go off on tangents, and I like to talk. I could talk about this stuff for hours, literally, and have. Ask my wife. I do talk about this stuff for hours. It fascinates me, and I like hearing different perspectives, but I've definitely formed my own opinions on the subject as well. But I don't know. I find that there are a lot of people in, let's say some of my European viewers, for example, who aren't very familiar with some of the American perspectives on current events, but also on economics and even the concept of liberty and freedom. You know, for those of you who don't know my bias, I am a classical liberal. I'm a classical liberal, and a free market capitalist. You know, I'm not quite a libertarian, and I'm not an anarcho-capitalist. I do believe in the rule of law, the social contract, and stuff like that. But I'm more of an individualist, and I believe in personal responsibility and freedom, whether that comes to our own social life or our economic life. And as a result, I typically would consider myself to be a classical liberal in a lot of respects. But you know, that's just one perspective, and I'm always eager to hear yours, and I hope you're eager to hear mine. Thank you all very much for watching. I think this has been a very promising start. Let's just try not to get assassinated in the next couple of years, and I think we will be able to get this train a-rolling. So hit that like button if you're looking forward to the rest of the series, leave a comment with your suggestions if you have any, and of course subscribe if you have not already. My name is Pravus, and I will see you guys next time.